On.
Done.
And we got, it looks like about 20 of us this morning. So good morning, happy Friday. And let me see, why am I already confused? This is week 2 only, right? We got a ways to go. End of week 2. We had a few environmental committees meeting this week. Environmental Natural Resources met in the Senate on Tuesday. A few bills were on there that we're tracking. Over on the House side, Ag and Natural Resources approach met on Wednesday. Environment, Ag, and Flooding Subcommittee. There you go, Michael. I couldn't put my fingers on it, but they met on Tuesday. Ag and Natural Resources approach met on Wednesday. And so we had some bill activity this week. The tracker went out yesterday, and I did attempt to reorder it by putting the bills up that are moving up towards the front, as I have been promising. I'm still not happy with the order, so I've changed it again already based on what I sent yesterday versus what I'm looking at. But I will make sure that these start to get a little closer together. What I want to have are the bills that are interesting, that we care about, that are moving, all up front, and then kind of towards the end of the documents will be the bills that will never see the light of day, but are still on there just because they're environmental related. And you know how it always is. A piece of one thing can get pulled out and amended onto another bill. So keeping it on the tracking list is still worthwhile. Anyway, so let me go ahead and get started. The tracker sent out yesterday the first couple of bills, inventories of critical wetlands. As advertised, there was movement, so they're up at the front. I still haven't really figured out or I haven't gotten a good explanation of why, what problem these pair of bills are intended to solve. But Broder and Trunau are, both thought leaders on environmental stuff, and the fact that they're running bills means there's some problem out there. I'm still going to track this down, and I don't know if anybody has heard what the problem statement was, but the simple summary of the bill requires each water management district to, along with their local governments, to develop a list of critical wetlands for acquisition. And remember, this would create an alternate kind of list compared to the department's Florida Forever list, that it uses to use funds from the LATF. So anyway, anybody here what the heck this is supposed to do other than mess with the current process? Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. I'll keep digging, but they are moving, both of these bills. The next pair, the cost share, the agriculture, shellfish, and timber, I don't even think they're moving, and yet they're at the second pair of bills on my list. So once again, I'm not happy with the order, but let me move on down. All Britain's residential property riparian rights. We talked about this. I think it came up on the call last week. It had made through its first committee. This changes the riparian lines, and I think Matt Butler had something to share with me. I don't even remember what it was. Sorry. It's moving in the Senate side. The House companion isn't moving yet. Not a terribly significant bill to our industry, but interesting. Long-term cleanup of harmful algal blooms. These are the pair of bills again. Broder and Trunau, another dynamic duo pair here. This requires the department to give preference to innovative technology that meet certain criteria for cleanup of harmful algal blooms. And I think some folks in our industry, AECOM comes to mind with their big algae harvester that they've got on Lake O right now. I think they're getting a lot of attention on that. And I suspect this bill is to make sure that funding continues to go to support, new technology like that and develop it here in Florida. So think it's fine policy and doesn't seem to be changing what's already happening, but maybe just reinforcing what's already happening. The next pair, sorry, it's not a pair, it's a single. Water Resources Management HB 349 is a little bit of a misnomer in the bill title. This is a hodgepodge, and I think I mentioned, called this, last week, a potential train. I'm just watching it. It's, it may or may not start to move and collect some other small pieces of environmental policy. Right now, it's got a dock exemption provision. It's got a easement provision for mitigation banks, and it's got a yeah. Those are the main things. All right. The Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission bills, SB 494 and 323. They're moving, but not terribly quickly. And if you care about FWC stuff, and there's a little provision in here about public bathing places, if you care about stuff like that, then that's the bill for you. Or those are the bills for you. Nothing in there really terribly significant. They're not on my top 10 list of bills to track. All right, so now finally something interesting so SB 856, this is the next pair in my list. Again, I may have reordered it, but the private provider bills, SB 856 and HB 309, this is Broder and Federhoff. These are moving, and I'm hearing a lot of chatter that these are going to pass. This is, I think, pushed by maybe the home builders or people like that have a lot of frustrations about how long it's taking to get inspections and to get permits through, and it's slowing up, home building. And so what this would do is create a mechanism for qualified individuals and companies to provide private inspections of septic tank installations and drain field installations and things like that. And they can, the DEP is not allowed to collect inspection and permit fees. This would be entirely private provider driven, and they just have to be, qualified and meet these criteria. So anyway, it's interesting. I think I mentioned last week, it appears to be a little bit of a policy conflict with, the legislation from just 2 years ago that pushed OSTDS permitting over to DEP and asked them to reconfigure, redo the thing and make it more stringent. And this seems to be making things a little easier to get permitted. But, the legislature is supposed to have infinite wisdom, right? So who are we to I'm just kidding. Sorry, that was one of those things, Laura, I said is why I shouldn't be recorded on Friday mornings. More to come on the private provider bill for sure. The sanitary sewer lateral inspection program bills. This is HB 303 by Truenow and 608 is a committee bill by Environmental Natural Resources Committee. I'm also hearing that these are going to pass this year. I think that these bills were in their same form run last year but didn't pass. But this creates an opportunity for municipalities to do inspect sewer laterals on private property, and the long-term, the long-standing complaint has been that the municipalities can keep leaks from happening in their own systems because they can inspect them and maintain them, but on the private property owner, their portion of the sewer lateral, there could be leaks that go on for years and nobody knows it, and they don't know how to, they can't get access to it to inspect it. So I think this is going to probably pass this year. So I'm watching it. The review of, so the next pair are HB 513 and SB 1326, the review of the CSF project. It is moving on the Senate side. Ray Rodriguez's version 1326 has passed its first committee stop this week, and it does require the South Florida Water Management District to prepare and submit a consolidated annual report regarding the status of the project to OEDR, the Office of Economic and Demographic Research, the Department of Environmental Protection, the governor, and the legislature by a specified date. So it's just kind of I guess maybe an annual report card of the Everglades, restoration project. Given how many eyes are on it and how much funding is going down there, I don't know what problem this is trying to solve, but it will create another obligation on South Florida to do an annual report. All right, next pair, development of current or former agricultural land. This is Albritton, SB 1210, and Bobby Payne, HB 909. I'm watching these closely because I'm hearing a lot of chatter about these two bills. So this would allow the redevelopment of former ag land, notwithstanding, and creates kind of a fast track conditional closure for those lands, and limited site assessment and limited remedial activity requirements from DEP, subject to further regulation. When even if those lands have been contaminated by application of pesticides and fertilizers and things like that as part of normal and customary ag operations. And we're all probably hearing about lots of converted former orange groves into residential development. Almost all of those conversions, when site assessments are performed, are finding some traces of pesticide, chemicals, and arsenic from fertilizer. And the problem is the department has been holding up those conversion processes, the closure processes, because they're looking for conventional kind of cleanup after the discharge of pollutants. But the argument here is, the policy argument here is, these aren't discharges of pollutants. These are the legal applications of authorized chemicals and fertilizers, and they shouldn't be penalized. Anyway, it's interesting because Albritton and Payne are running them. I'm hearing a huge amount of pushback from Miami-Dade County in particular, and I think the Brownfields Association is supporting this. So I think they're going to go, but it has not been moving yet, which sounds like maybe there's a negotiation going on. All right, the reef bills, and these are not coral reefs, people. These are Resilient Energy Environment Florida projects. So these are, think about your PACE program where you get to put attic insulation in and put the cost on your property taxes for the next 20 years. This would extend that to other qualifying types of projects, and it's a you can look in the bill to see what kinds of projects, but it's an expansion of the PACE program for more kind of energy efficiency and resiliency kind of stuff. I think I heard some chatter that one of the qualifying activities is like upgrading your septic tank to some new technology, and that would be interesting. But it's moving in the Senate, and that's a Finance and Tax Committee bill, SB 228. The House version, which is Representative Fine, is not yet moving. All right. Any questions? I'm going to catch my breath before I jump into the PFAS bills, because there'll be something to talk about there. Anything so far?
Jeff, this is Mike. I did hear a bunch from the Army, from the Water Management District, that Army Corps, the review of the SFS flooding project, they're taking it really serious. Like, they think it's going to be a big restudy, not just an annual report card. Well,
the Army Corps doesn't always read everything that's put in front of them before they make statements. So maybe they ought to read the bill.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Okay.
Because it doesn't, and the state legislature of Florida can't make them. That's a congressional, I mean, that's a federal project.
No,
so.
no, I'm sorry. That was from the Water Management District I was hearing of.
Oh, well, the Water
So some
Management
of their
District,
staff are thinking
yeah.
that it's going to be a big effort. Yeah.
Well, now that may be true. Because it does require the Water Management District to do this annual report, and you know, I could totally see that reaction. I thought you wanted to go out and make us follow the federal program and spend all this money you're giving us, but instead you want us to stop and fill out a report every year. I mean, I don't know. I'm being a little snarky. I haven't talked to the sponsors or anybody that's really close to the legislation to understand what the intent is, but I could see that reaction.
Right.
But I don't think any of us.
For sure.
Okay, yeah, it's just something we're tracking, and I'm going to try to get some more information on review of CSF. I know we've been hearing chatter about that since it was first filed. Okay, PFAS. There are 4 PFAS policy bills now, and there are a couple of other PFAS bills that I'm probably going to take out that are just appropriations PFAS bills. But to try to bring a little bit of clarity, so you've got kind of 2 sets of bills that were set up to do really 2 different things, and it looks like they are getting merged. And let me just set the stage for you. So HB 1475 by McClure and SB 1418 by Albritton are carbon copies of the bills that we've seen the last couple of years. Last year it was Broxton and Andrade that ran a bill that required DEP to adopt statewide rules for PFAS and requires legislative ratification of those rules, and then tells DEP to stop doing 62780 site assessment letters until those things are done. That's more or less what those 2 bills say, and that's more or less what was last year. I think Albritton's is a carbon copy. I think McClure's is slightly different. But so that's been going on. That kind of concept has been going on for a couple of years at least. And then this year, Senate Environmental Natural Resources Committee filed a bill. So this was attributed to Broder, that would create a task force, within DEP. Identifies a certain amount of time to fill the task force. It's a pretty large and growing task force. I think I heard it's up to 18 designated members from all different kind of industries and environmental groups and science and blah 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 blah, and then requires the department to staff the task force and requires them to provide a report in like 2 years. All right, so some folks are thinking, well, that's just to kick the can down the road kind of bill. But there's there's a lot of legitimacy to kind of holding back the department, right, in doing a lot of making requirements on industries and landowners before there are things like water quality standards, before there are rule adopted or EPA accepted sampling, protocol. So whether it's the Albritton McClure version or the Broder version, the feeling is that the department needs to slow down a little bit. Now, I've talked to the deputy secretary last week at CEQ, and he made a very good point that EPA is going to begin to roll out new requirements, and states will have a limited amount of time to begin to implement them, or if they don't, then EPA will begin implementing them. So if the legislature basically ratchets the handcuffs on DEP too much, then we may end up with EPA regulating PFAS in Florida, and that's something the legislature also doesn't want to have happen. So I think we're going to see a combination of all 4 bills, or excuse me, the 2 pairs into a single pair. And I think we're going to see some major changes. I'm going to be on a call this afternoon with a group that we're calling ourselves the PFAS Coalition. It's got the League of Cities and the Ports Council and the Airports Council and several other industry groups. And we're talking with McClure about maybe having his bill on the House and either Albritton's or the Senate Environmental and Natural Resources bill in the Senate basically be conformed to create a pair of bills. So more to come on that. It's going to be very interesting. This is, pretty significant policy for Florida, a lot of implications on a lot of different types of industry groups and landowners and sectors of Florida. So a lot to digest, and I will be sharing updates with that on that issue weekly. Any questions on PFAS before I tell you about the next pair that aren't going anywhere that are PFAS related? Okay, so the discharge and use of firefighting foam bills, Polsky and Casello, these prohibit the use of Class B firefighting foams which contain PFAS. It's not going anywhere because this is a federally regulated program. So the FAA and the Department of Homeland Security both require the use of Class B firefighting foam for aviation and for shipboard fires. So doesn't matter what the state does, it's a federal program or federal regulation. So these bills, they're a waste of paper, and I'm not planning on talking about them next week or any other week. Okay, the rest of the bills on this list, I am putting in the category of not going anywhere. And let me take the last 6 minutes and see if anybody has any more questions or anything interesting to talk about.
Hey Jeff, this is Jim. Yeah, somebody in my office was inquiring about Senate Bill 1078, House Bill 783. It looks like it's something with regards to abolishing soil and water conservation districts.
Oh yeah. That's a pretty popular thing to run. We've had a bill like that maybe every other year that I can think of. Halsey Bashirs ran this a few years ago. I think there's a group of legislators every year that I think kind of look around the state at all of these some arcane or historic programs that were started 50 years ago or whatever, and ask the question, do we really need them? And then these bills get filed as a way to kind of spark a conversation. I wouldn't put a lot of effort, or I shouldn't say that. I wouldn't be too concerned if you're a fan of your soil and water conservation district and worry about it going away. This is a pretty common thing. I'm not dismissing that it's gonna this year is going to be the year they get rid of it, but it hasn't been it hasn't been calendared at its first committee stop. So I think it's probably going to die like the previous versions.
Thanks.
No problem. Anything CCNA? I'm not seeing anything CCNA, but I'm not really studying it hard. Alan, there was a question in the chat. Anything on CCNA yet? I haven't heard anything.
No, Jeff, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah. We're always watching.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something coming, but it's early. It's only the second week.
Yep. All right. I think I got the questions. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention, and hope everybody has a great weekend, and we will talk to you all next week. And don't hesitate to shoot me an email or call me offline if you got anything else you want me to look at for you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.